4.7 might be one of the biggest combat shakeups Star Citizen has had in 13 years, and most people still aren't looking at the parts that matter most. Yeah, people are talking about armor. They're talking about fighters maybe struggling more against larger ships, and they're talking about how big ships are getting tougher. But I think the bigger story is what happens when you combine those armor changes with the radar and aim assist changes. If both of those systems land anywhere close to what they look like right now, 4.7 may not just change what weapons you bring. It may change how fleets fight, how fighters engage, and how safe or dangerous the larger ships really are. Before we get into it, I do want to apologize for missing my last video. I've been sick and honestly, it's kind of only gotten worse, but I wanted to push through and get this one done because I think this topic really matters. This video is really about the bigger picture of what 4.7 looks like it's doing to combat. Not just which ship beats which, but how armor, shields, radar, aim assist, and power management may start pushing the game towards more defined ship classes and more layered tactics. And honestly, I think that the direction is a good one. What this adds is more depth. It pushes players to think more carefully about the weapons they bring and the threats they expect to face instead of just defaulting to full laser repeater loadouts for absolutely everything. That's really healthy for the game overall. Now, obviously this is still PTU Wave 1. It's very subject to change, and the exact balance is nowhere near final yet. The biggest visible shift right now is that armor appears to be functioning with real damage thresholds. In simple terms, a lot of high DPS, low alpha weapons may not be able to damage heavier ships at all if each individual shot fails to pass the armor check. So this feels less like a simple weapon rebalance and more like a major shift in combat philosophy. For years, Star Citizen combat has leaned heavily around light and medium fighters being the center of almost everything. What 4.7 looks like it may be doing is pushing the game more towards ships filling specific purposes, with weapon choice, target matching, and fleet composition mattering a lot more than they have in the past. A lot of repeaters may struggle or fail against heavier ships. Certain harder-hitting cannons may still get through, and that could heavily change how people build ships going forward. It's also more nuanced than the caveman thinking that repeaters bad, cannons good. First, the shot has to deal with shields. Then the remaining damage gets checked against the armor threshold. If it passes, armor modifiers affect the final damage. That means energy and ballistics may not behave the way people assume. And this is the part that I actually like. Instead of everyone just throwing on the same laser repeaters because they're the easy default answer, this starts pushing players to make more deliberate choices based on what they expect to fight. That gives more meaning to ship class, weapon choice, target priority, and the entirety of the fleet composition. That kind of added depth is what makes combat more interesting. It gives people a reason to choose different weapons to maximize their effectiveness against different threats, rather than just running one universal loadout. With that said, I like the direction, but it absolutely needs refinement. Light, medium, and heavy fighters all should have a clear role to play on the battlefield. And beyond that, bombers, medium support ships, gunships, large support ships, and capital ships should all matter for different reasons too. That's the version of this system I want to see. Not one where a single class becomes the obvious answer to everything, and not one where certain ships or weapons just feel pointless. This should create a more layered combat ecosystem, not a new one-dimensional meta. But here's where I think CIG still has a lot of work to do in getting this dialed in. I like the direction overall. I think this is a healthy shift for the game, but some of the current armor interactions may be a bit too extreme, especially if certain size 4 or size 5 weapons end up doing essentially nothing against larger ships like a Perseus. And there's another part of this conversation that really shouldn't get ignored. I don't want newer players to get left behind so badly that they take a starter ship and pick up a mission like Gilly's first combat gauntlet that they suddenly can't even kill the target because their weapons no longer meaningfully damage something like a Pisces. That's the kind of situation that needs to be avoided. You can make combat deeper without making the early experience miserable. If entry-level players hit a wall that early, that's not depth. It just causes more frustration for the player. CIG needs to make sure that early mission progression still works, even if higher-end combat becomes more specialized. Now, one of the biggest missing pieces in the current discussion is that even if a fighter can't do meaningful hull damage to a heavy ship with a certain loadout, that doesn't make it automatically become useless. Fighters may still be valuable for stripping shields, prioritizing turret targeting, PDC targeting, degrading exposed exterior systems, and enabling the rest of the strike package. That changes the fighter's job from soloing the big ship to helping break down the ship's defenses so the rest of the fleet can exploit it. And that's why PDCs matter so much. If PDCs and turrets are easier to target now, and armor thresholds aren't protecting them the same way as the hull, then fighters and precise medium or heavy ships may still have a huge role in opening up larger targets. Smaller ships may still contribute meaningfully against larger ships, not by tearing apart the hull directly, but by degrading defenses and creating openings for bombers, torpedoes, or heavy fire support. That kind of interaction is way more interesting than a flat damage race with swarms of fighters. Now, if you enjoy breakdowns like this that go beyond the surface and look at what these patches may actually mean for Star Citizen's future, subscribe. That's what I'm trying to do here, not just react to patch drama, but connect the dots and look at the direction of the game as a whole. Now, armor is half the story. The radar changes may be just as important, and honestly, I don't think enough people are really talking about them. Hip and precision assist ranges are much shorter. More importantly, fighters now have to get in much closer, around a click or so, to have reliable targeting support and actually put meaningful fire on target. Radar size and power appear to matter more, while larger ships and turrets may now have a much easier time tracking fighters than they did in 4.6. And that likely means significantly less safe damage going into larger ships from range. To me, that's the hidden part of the update. If fighters have to get in much closer to do any meaningful damage because of the armor thresholds, while size 2 and size 3 radars give medium, large, and capital ships better targeting support and longer effective ranges, in some cases out to 2.5 clicks, then larger ships may take far less damage at longer ranges than they did in the previous update. Fighters can't just sit 2.5 clicks away and safely wear down those ships from a distance anymore. What this also suggests is that turrets will likely be more effective than they were before, and to me, that makes it look like CIG is genuinely trying to move turret gameplay closer to what they've wanted it to be for a long time. A more meaningful defensive layer on larger ships instead of something that's too easy to work around. The big thing they still need to do, though, is make sure turrets can traverse fast enough to stay effective, because better targeting ranges and radar support only go so far if the turret itself still can't physically keep up. That's a huge shift. If these changes persist in some form, ship classes may become much more distinct, which I think is a really good thing if it's tuned correctly. Fighters may be pushed more towards screening, interception, anti-fighter work, and prioritizing defensive component targeting on larger ships. Heavier fighters may lean more towards pressuring tougher fighters, threatening medium ships, and possibly using higher alpha loadouts against heavier targets of opportunity. Bombers and strike ships may become more important for punishing large ships and capitals once defenses are degraded. Gunships, large support ships, and capital ships may matter more for holding space, defending the formation, shaping the battlefield, and forcing smaller ships into more dangerous attack windows. And really, this is what I want to see out of all of this. More actual combined arms gameplay. Not a one-dimensional meta where one class or one ship solves everything. I want to see fighters screening, bombers threatening larger ships, support ships supporting the formation, gunships and larger ships anchoring the fight, and teams choosing ships and weapons based on the situation. That's where combat will get extremely interesting. Not rigid hard counters, but enough separation between ship purposes that composition, coordination, and good decisions actually matter. So here's what I'm hoping that they refine as this matures. Fighters should not just be the universal answer to everything, but large ships should not become too insulated either. Specialization is good. Invalidating entire ship types is not. And early game combat still needs to work for newer players. The best outcome is a healthy middle ground where each class has a purpose, each weapon type has trade-offs, and players are rewarded for making smart choices. My overall read is that 4.7 may be doing much more than people realize. Armor thresholds are changing what weapons can hurt what. Radar changes are compressing combat into more dangerous ranges. Prioritizing component targeting may become much more important, and together those things may finally start giving Star Citizen combat more texture and more role separation. I think CIG's direction here is a good one. It adds depth. It makes weapon choice matter more. It gives ship classes a stronger reason to exist. If CIG lands this well, this could be one of the best combat shifts the game has had in years outside of a new flight model. But what do you think? Do you like the direction CIG is taking with armor and radar in 4.7, or do you think they may be pushing it a little too far? And where do you think the balance should land between fighters, support ships, and larger fleet assets? If you value what I'm doing here and want to support the channel directly, consider becoming a channel member. It really does help me keep making these videos, keep covering Star Citizen at this level, and keep putting in the time to break this stuff down in a way that hopefully adds something useful to the conversation. You'll get members-only channels in my Discord, shoutouts in every video, and more. And if you want to hear more about where I'm currently at with Star Citizen right now, go and check my last video about my honest feelings on the game and the current state of everything surrounding it. I think it gives a lot more context on how I look at changes like this. As always, thanks for watching. Fly safe, pilots, and I'll see you in the verse. Havoc out.